All right, guys, we're going to be looking at today is the powertrain for the Hemi that we're throwing in. We've got a NAG1 built by Paramount Performance and the Borg Warner 4440 transfer case from the original car. We're going to be talking a lot of detail on both of these and kind of the capabilities that we have, some of the issues that we might face and so forth. Get these finally bolted together. And then we're also going to be touching on the drive, the front CV drive shafts, drive axles, and then the actual front drive shaft, the prop shaft as well. So a lot to come on the entire powertrain as well today, guys. It is all coming together. So let's go ahead and get into it. We've got a bunch of parts out for the front subframe. So we haven't seen this in a little bit. The front subframe on the all-wheel drive Charger is a little bit different. All right, guys, so I'm taking over in post just to give you a little bit more information about this front subframe from the all-wheel drive LX platform. So the big differences we have, you guys just saw kind of the overview of it here. We've specifically got the axle arrangement for that front spindle that the spline CV axle goes through. And for that to actually occur, you have to have a different setup for the suspension. So in this case, they use a U style end fork for that front coilover. Some use an L shape, others are U. But generally speaking, we have differences like the front steering rack here. So this one is actually a divorce setup with a hydroelectric pump up front, whereas on the rear wheel drive Chargers we would have that actually all integrated into the steering rack there in the back. Obviously we can't do that on this one because in this situation we have an attached front differential. So this front differential is how all the magic happens when it comes to the all-wheel drive from the front half of the vehicle. The front differential has to be matched in terms of the gearing, the same that is in the rear differential with about a 1% deviation. So in this case, this has I believe a 307 front gear, and we're running now with that new Hellcat differential from a few episodes ago, a 309. So those two differentials essentially are close enough to match. There's also some variance within the tire diameter as well that you have to track. But the big thing again is the front subframes on these all-wheel drive LXs have to allow for that front differential and those CVs to pass between the engine mounts. And here in a little bit, I'm going to show you some more detail on these engine mounts, the CV axles, and everything else. But the big thing to note, we're actually using some upgraded engine mounts here, but we're actually going to go to a different version than what we show because we didn't end up liking how harsh this setup was with just the urethane bushings, and so actually go to a modified setup here in the future. So I'm just going to get you guys back to the video, and so you guys can see how we go through the subframe. All right, guys, so we got the front subframe mostly set up for the engine. We got the actual engine mounts somewhat positioned down. The actual mount itself from BMR, you guys can see it's got urethane on both sides of the plate. And then goes through. Now the all-wheel drive mounts look like they're a little bit different than a typical rear-wheel drive mount configuration, simply because of the drive shaft that's going to go right through here. And so it's a little bit offset with a Mickey Mouse kind of aluminum section to add to the actual mount itself. So same mounts and everything used, and then the actual mounts themselves are kind of staggered a little bit, but moved off to the side at an angle. So this is how the mount system will be. Probably when we get the engine, we'll go ahead and take these 2 bolts off on each side and get the actual mounts themselves here bolted to the side of the engine block. And then crane the whole thing down back onto this subframe and get them lined up perfectly here on the holes, and then put the final torque for this guy. I think it's about 45 foot-pounds is what the manual asks for. Beyond that, we got the axles in on both sides. So these right now are just new OEM axles. The plan is to try and go to some beefy axles down the line, and then specifically to see what we can do right now with the intermediate shaft. The original intermediate shaft would have a front axle disconnect that uses a little actuator right here to move a gear over the a spline outer gear over these 2 inner gears, and that locks or opens up this front drive shaft completely, so that in essence it's not even all-wheel drive, it's just rear-wheel drive even beyond the actual transfer case. And so what we're going to try and do just to get the strength of this entire intermediate shaft upgraded, we're probably going to make this one section inside of this unit, and that will make sure that there's no issues within the oil pan in case it were to fracture, because right here is kind of a weak point in the stock configuration. So this intermediate shaft is probably going to change. We're working on that right now with a custom group, but otherwise the shafts themselves, for the passenger side, we've got a male. For the driver's side, we've got a female input for that intermediate shaft. Otherwise, it's just a pretty simple axle setup for an all-wheel drive car, and the idea is we get to upgrade those in the future if we need to. Beyond that, everything else is cleaned up and ready to go for the subframe. We also got the transfer case and that NAG1 positioned, ready for the new engine. And then obviously that front differential that will bolt to the side with the all-wheel drive oil pan that allows all this to occur. And obviously the torque converter as well. Some bits and pieces in the middle, but the plan is for the next episode, you guys will see the unboxing for the MMX 422 engine. We'll be getting it all set up, craning it onto this setup, getting the headers installed. Once it's mounted on here, we'll be able to throw on the rest of the powertrain, and then start throwing on all of the goodies like the supercharger and so forth, and finishing out that long block for the entire car, and then finally getting it into the engine, into the charger itself. Now that the subframe and everything's set up, once it's in, we'll get that drive shaft in, and we're locked in for the entire powertrain. So stay tuned, guys. The next episode, you'll see the unboxing of the MMX 422. Catch you guys later.